There exists a world that you can only reach between 2:20 and 2:30 a.m. Before you travel, I must advise you of a few rules. Rule number 1, no matter how inviting they seem, avoid the glowing doors. Stepping through one will scatter pieces of you across countless dimensions. Rule number 2.
If you're interested in the mystery genre and spend a fair amount of time on TikTok, chances are you've come across videos like these. Videos that challenge our perception of reality and explore the possibility of parallel worlds, accessible only under specific conditions or through certain rituals. The concept of a parallel world has long captivated human imagination, appearing in both modern horror fiction and ancient myths, reinforcing the idea that there may be hidden realms beyond our perception. In pop culture, horror games like Silent Hill depict an alternate reality that exists alongside our own, where a familiar town is transformed into a grotesque, nightmarish version of itself. Similarly, in the anime Mayoiga, The Lost Village, a group of travelers stumbles upon a mysterious settlement that does not appear on any maps, suggesting the existence of a place disconnected from our reality. Beyond fiction, the internet has amplified curiosity about parallel dimensions through urban legends like the elevator game, a South Korean ritual said to transport players into a hauntingly silent, reddish-hued version of our world. Given how deeply embedded the concept of parallel worlds is in modern horror, it's no surprise that ancient civilizations also had their own legends of hidden realms. Throughout history, cultures across the world have spoken of mystical cities that exist beyond human reach. There's Shambhala, a Tibetan kingdom of enlightenment said to be hidden deep within the Himalayas, where only those with the purest hearts can enter. And in the Philippines, the legend of Biringan tells of an invisible city inhabited by supernatural beings, where those who enter either never return or come back forever changed. However, among all these legends, one stands out. Saranjana, a hidden city said to exist on Laut Island, deep within Indonesia's tropical expanse. A city so breathtaking, so prosperous, and so far beyond our own civilization, that those who manage to enter its realm never wish to return. What makes the legend of Saranjana so unique and intriguing is not just the way this parallel world interacts with ours, but also the sheer number of witnesses, including well-known musicians. And most importantly, as you watch this video, you will learn that this hidden realm, in some way, actually exists. One of the most intriguing aspects of this legend is the consistency in how witnesses describe its inhabitants. Unlike most tales of otherworldly beings, often depicted as mystical, ghostly, or vaguely defined, the legend of Saranjana presents a strikingly specific detail. Its people share a distinct physical trait that sets them apart from ordinary humans. They have no philtrum. The philtrum is the small vertical groove between the nose and the upper lip, a feature present in every human. Yet, for reasons unknown, every reported sighting of a Saranjana resident describes them as completely lacking this defining characteristic. But what makes the Saranjana phenomenon even more extraordinary isn't just the stories of people finding their way into the city or what they experienced inside. It's also the chilling claims that Saranjana's inhabitants have been seen in our world, interacting with humans, engaging in trade, buying goods and conducting business, just like ordinary customers. One of the most chilling first-hand accounts emerged on platform X, formerly Twitter, shared by a user with the handle @Seputjesit. His post quickly went viral, detailing an eerie encounter experienced by people close to him, each involving direct contact with individuals believed to be from Saranjana. The incident took place in the early 2000s at a toy store owned by a friend of his mother. One day, an elderly man with an unusual appearance walked in. He was barefoot, dressed in tattered clothing, and most unsettling of all, he lacked a philtrum. Despite his ragged appearance, the old man carried himself with an air of calm politeness. He approached the counter and calmly requested to buy a large number of Barbie dolls. At the time, Barbie dolls were considered quite expensive, and the shopkeeper hesitated, suspecting that the man might not be able to afford them. But to their shock, the elderly man pulled out a large sum of cash and paid for the dolls without a second thought. Still perplexed, the shopkeeper, driven by curiosity, cautiously asked why he needed so many. The old man smiled faintly and replied in a soft voice, "For my grandchildren in my hometown." At the time, the shopkeeper didn't think much of it. But later, as they reflected on the encounter, an unsettling realization crept in. The man had vanished after his purchase, and something about his presence felt profoundly unnatural. Over time, many similar stories have circulated among locals about their encounters with the mysterious city of Saranjana and its people. However, two stories stand out as the most intriguing of them all. One of them was experienced by a local doctor named Dr. Devi. It was around 8 p.m. in 2023 when Dr. Devi and her family arrived at Bukit Mamak, a highland viewpoint on Pulau Laut, South Kalimantan. This spot offers visitors a clear view of the calm sea stretching over the northern side of the island. A light drizzle fell, casting a misty veil over the hills. The area was eerily quiet, with only 2 other visitors besides her family of 5. The stillness of the night felt unnatural, as if the place itself was holding its breath. Wanting to capture the moment, Devi asked her husband to take a few photos. The first image showed nothing unusual, just the dark, sprawling wilderness in the background. But when he took the second photo, just seconds later, his face suddenly drained of color. This is what his smartphone captured. On the screen, where there should have been only dense forest and sea, stood a glowing city skyline, complete with towering skyscrapers and bright lights piercing through the darkness. Even stranger, 2 luminous lines stretched from where Devi stood, leading directly to the mysterious city, as if marking a hidden path. A deep primal fear settled over them. Her husband gripped her arm tightly. "We need to leave. Now." His tone was urgent, his eyes locked onto the screen. Devi, confused, glanced around. The landscape before them was nothing but empty hills, dotted with a few distant lights from houses. Yet on the camera screen she saw something entirely different. Later that night, Devi posted the unsettling image to her WhatsApp status. Within hours it spread like wildfire. Some dismissed it as a camera glitch, an illusion caused by mist and lighting. Others, however, were certain this was proof of Saranjana, the lost city said to exist in a parallel world. But Devi knew what she had seen. The place where she stood that night had no tall buildings, no city, only darkness and silence. Yet, the photograph told a different story. What Dr. Devi and her family experienced was undoubtedly chilling. But perhaps nothing was as unsettling as what happened to Ari Lasso and the band Kotak during their concerts in South Kalimantan. Ari Lasso, one of Indonesia's most renowned musicians, had performed countless times across the country. By 2005, he was no stranger to massive crowds, high-energy concerts, or intense atmospheres. Yet nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to face. He and his team were scheduled to perform at a stadium on Pulau Laut, South Kalimantan, a region deeply intertwined with the legend of Saranjana. The stadium had only one entrance and one exit, making crowd control relatively straightforward, or so they thought. Before the concert, Ari's team was pulled aside for an unusual briefing by the event organizers. At first, it seemed like standard concert instructions, but then the briefing took a bizarre turn. They were told, "Do not be surprised if some audience members move strangely or unnaturally. If you notice people with unusual faces, remain calm. Do not panic if audience members suddenly disappear." At first, Ari and his team laughed it off. They thought it was just local superstition or an attempt to scare them. After all, this was just another concert, right? But as the night unfolded, the weight of those warnings became clear. The stadium was packed. Around 12,000 people filled the venue, their energy electrifying the air. Ari took the stage, performing song after song, and as far as he could see, the audience seemed completely normal. People danced, sang along, and cheered as they always did. Nothing seemed out of place. It wasn't until the concert ended that things took a terrifying turn. As the final song concluded, Ari quickly thanked the crowd. Following standard security protocol, he and his band were immediately escorted off stage and into their vehicle. While the audience was still distracted by the fireworks show, they needed to leave before the crowd was allowed to exit, an essential measure to prevent bottlenecks and ensure a smooth departure. But as the car began driving through the stadium grounds, Ari was stunned by what he saw. The massive crowd that had been there just minutes earlier had almost completely disappeared. Out of the 12,000 people who had filled the stadium, only around 2,000 remained. The once-packed venue now looked eerily empty. At first, Ari thought maybe the crowd had already rushed outside, but when the car reached the stadium's only exit, he was met with another chilling realization. Outside, there were barely a few hundred people. Where had everyone gone? There was only one exit, and it was physically impossible for thousands of people to leave in just a few minutes. The air felt thick with something unnatural, an invisible presence pressing against his skin. For the first time in his career, Ari felt real fear at a concert.
Itu salah satu ya. Yang pertama, jadi ini pertama kali gua.
The same eerie phenomenon would repeat itself around weeks later, during a concert by the Indonesian rock band Kotak at the very same stadium. Tantri, the lead vocalist of Kotak, had heard rumors about the stadium and its connection to Saranjana, but she didn't believe in such things. The band was focused on their performance, not ghost stories. But just like Ari Lasso before their concert began, the organizers gave them the same strange warning. Unlike Ari's team, who had laughed it off, Tantri and her bandmates felt uneasy. There was something about the way the organizers spoke, the way their expressions seemed serious and unshaken, that made them believe this wasn't just a joke. That night, the concert venue was once again filled with people. Thousands gathered, and just like before, everything seemed completely normal. At first. As the concert progressed, Tantri began to notice something odd. The front section of the crowd was lively, singing along, jumping and moving with the rhythm of the music. But the back section of the crowd was different. They stood completely still. They weren't cheering, they weren't moving, they weren't even swaying. They just stood there, motionless, as if frozen in time. Still, Tantri forced herself to focus on the performance. Maybe it was just her imagination. Maybe the people in the back were just tired. Then came the moment that made her blood run cold. In the middle of a song, Tantri turned away from the crowd for just a second, facing the drummer behind her. But when she turned back, half of the audience had disappeared. It didn't make sense. Just seconds earlier, the venue had been packed with thousands of people, but in the blink of an eye, they were gone. She could feel her chest tighten as panic threatened to take over, but she remembered the organizer's warning. Don't react. Pretend you didn't notice. She forced herself to continue singing, gripping the microphone tightly, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. The concert continued as if nothing had happened, but deep down she knew something was terribly wrong. After the show, unable to contain her curiosity, Tantri approached one of the event organizers. She wanted to know what had happened. Who were those people? Where did they go? The organizer simply gave her a vague, unsettling answer. They came from the lost city. He didn't elaborate. He didn't explain. He simply left her with those words as if that alone was enough. Was Saranjana real? Had its inhabitants attended their concert that night? Were the unmoving figures in the back of the crowd not human at all? These questions haunted Tantri for years, just as they had haunted Ari Lasso. The mysterious old man. The eerie silhouette of a skyscraper. The vanished concert audience. All these stories, these strange incidents, sound like something straight out of a horror movie. While physicists have speculated about the possibility of parallel worlds, the tales of Saranjana often feel like just another urban legend, a story that seems more like fiction than reality. But what if I told you that Saranjana is real? Just not in the way you might expect. The earliest recorded mention of Saranjana dates back to an 1845 map created by German naturalist Salomon Müller. In this map, Saranjana is clearly marked as a location in the southern part of Pulau Laut, South Kalimantan. But this wasn't the only time Saranjana appeared in historical records. A Dutch dictionary published in 1869 by Peter Johannes Veth also referenced it, affirming that Saranjana was once recognized as a real geographical place. Strangely, however, by the end of World War II, the name had vanished from modern maps. By the mid-19th century, Saranjana had been erased, replaced by the name Oka Oka. However, one question remains. What is Saranjana? What makes its name so legendary that it is still remembered as the Great Lost City to this day? One possible explanation is that Saranjana was never a mystical city, but rather a historical kingdom that faded into obscurity. According to a 2018 research paper by Indonesian historian Mansur, the legend of Saranjana may have originated from an ancient Dayak Samihim kingdom that existed long before the 17th century. This kingdom was allegedly ruled by a leader named Sambu Ranjana, whose name is believed to have gradually evolved into Saranjana over time. In the mid-1600s, the kingdom was attacked by an external force that arrived by sea. The invasion was devastating. Many of its people were either killed or forced to flee, leaving the settlement abandoned. By the 17th century, Pulau Laut became entangled in a major political conflict within the Banjar Sultanate. Sultan Amarullah Bagus Kusuma, who ascended the throne in 1660, faced a rebellion led by Prince Purabaya, a rival who claimed he was the rightful heir. To ease tensions, the Sultan granted Pulau Laut to Prince Purabaya as an appanage, effectively making it part of his dominion. However, instead of accepting this peacefully, Purabaya turned Pulau Laut into a stronghold of resistance, gathering followers from various regions, including those who had long opposed the Banjar Sultanate. His rebellion lasted for years, but in 1717 he was ultimately defeated and killed. After his death, Pulau Laut's significance in history began to fade. The land once known as Saranjana, once home to a thriving kingdom, was left abandoned and uninhabited. Yet the people of surrounding areas continued to speak of it, preserving it in collective memory. To them, Saranjana was more than just a lost city. It was a vision, an idea of what could have been. A kingdom so beautiful, so prosperous, so advanced that it surpassed even the Banjar Sultanate in every aspect. But it was a vision that never came to fruition. Over generations, its story evolved, no longer just a kingdom lost to war, but a mystical city, one that only the chosen few could ever see. This kind of transformation is not unusual. Throughout history, abandoned civilizations have often been romanticized, turning into legends of perfect mystical lands lost in time. This is it. We finally found the ultimate answer. Saranjana did exist, but it changed its name decades ago. It was home to a more advanced civilization, but its advancements were compared to the Banjar Sultanate, not to modern civilization as we know it today. However, this still doesn't explain all the paranormal incidents that have occurred. While we know that Saranjana only existed in the past, the mysterious stories about an unseen city on Laut Island and its inhabitants persist to this day. It seems the legacy of Saranjana refuses to fade, and we will likely continue to hear new witness accounts and see more alleged footage of the city for years to come.